Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the feature address of the evening. Friends, a true leader does not focus on the consequences of his or her action, but focuses on what is right. In this regard, our fearless political leader has championed the defense of our democracy in the most sacrificial way. These sacrifices were made in keeping with his oath of office to act without fear or favor, malice or ill will. His academic excellence is well documented and respected, having attained a doctoral degree from the University of the West Indies. In addition, his awesome contribution at the parliamentary level spans more than 2.5 decades of outstanding service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Further, he has added strategic value to government, having held a multiplicity of portfolios as a government minister, in which he has led many successful initiatives. Today, when corruption in state enterprises and government as a whole continue to embarrass us as a nation, and where Kamla Baba and the 40 thieves are swimming in an ocean so blue, demand that we must be rescued from those who lead our nation with unclean hands and spirits. We need a strong leader, one who is courageous, and one who has shown demonstrated ability to handle pressure and the challenges of leadership with integrity, decency, and soberness of mind. The PNM's leader is the only man for the job to lead Trinidad and Tobago from the destruction of the lion spirit of the UNC. My friends, restoration is coming. Hope is alive. Political salvation is near. As tonight, our political leader will take us one step closer to victory. So help me welcome to the lectern to address us, the Member of Parliament for Delawatin West, the political leader of the People's National Movement, the leader of the opposition, and the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, Dr. Keith Rowley.
Thank you very much, Assistant General Secretary of the PNM, the indefatigable Dr. Party officers, Chairman of Corporation, with particular recognition to the Chairman of the South Lamington Corporation, Mr. Anthony Roberts, and his colleague, the Chairman of the Mt.D'or Regional Corporation, our councillors, particularly the most energetic councillor I've worked with for quite a while. If you see this lady climb up here this evening, and then to add insult to the injury, I asked her how many pounds did you lose, and she said none. Councillor Victor, you know. my parliamentary colleague, the leader of the PNM in the Senate, Senator Camille Robinson Regis. My other parliamentary colleague, and to be re-elected, the Member of Parliament for St. Joseph, Mr. Terence D'or. Councillors, all visitors to Mt.D'or residents. I particularly want to thank the residents of Mt.D'or from Spring Valley all the way down, who welcomed us so warmly into your neighborhood this evening and pledged your support for the PNM. Thank you for that. Members of the media who continue to cover us, because I know there are those who will wish you away and rather to not here. But you are welcome to the PNM meeting, because we have nothing to hide and the population has everything to learn from the PNM platform. Welcome to the media, and thank you to the members of the protective services who keep us comfortable and safe as we go around the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I could spend a lot of time tonight talking about animals. Because I've been trained in zoology. And you didn't know that. I have training in zoology. But I'm not going to spend 1 minute tonight on any animal. Not tonight, nor no other night. Because I realize that this desperate government is proving the maxim. Desperate people do desperate things. But I want to say one thing which I must say. As a public official, I hold the office of opposition leader. And I represent all the people of Trinidad and Tobago in that office, because there's only one person who has that job. And while I have it, I do the job without fear, favor, malice, or ill will. And if I resort to the Tobago genealogy that I carry without any complaint or apology, if I resort to that in invoking the concept of tit for tat, and it has offended any person in this country, I'm in the service of the people of this country, and I'm not in the business of offending anyone. So therefore I have regrets on that. That was my intention, to offend anybody. If there are those who think that they can prosper politically by that, I wish them well. I wish them well. But I simply want to remind you, there is a lot that the government and the government's friends don't want you to know. Because they know that if you know that, they don't stand a chance in hell in getting back into office to continue their misconduct, which has been the highlight for the last 4.5 years. So their campaign is to make sure that you don't know what you should know, hoping that you will vote in ignorance. But the PNM is here to ensure that doesn't happen. When you vote, regardless of who you vote for, from Charlottesville to Cedros, from Carenage to Toho, you will vote in the full knowledge of your circumstance, and you, the population, will decide if you want more of this or if you want to change for the better. The PNM will ensure that you have the knowledge, because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And we give you that power to make the decision, and you will be responsible for your own circumstances after that. You see, I watched my parliamentary colleague last night, Dr. Keith, and I felt so ashamed of my parliamentary colleague. I keep telling people I've been in politics for a long time in this country. I've fought many battles. I fought for A.N.R. Robinson, Basdeo Pandey, all the way down, over decades. I remember Mr. Robinson calling me one day to his house after he retired. Called me to his house to have tea with him. And as we sat down over these formalities, because Mr. Robinson was a very formal man, when we sat down over tea, and he offered me sweet bread, which he praised very highly. I suspected he had something to do with it. So he praised the sweet bread, and we had tea and the sweet bread before the conversation started, and he looked at me, and he broke into a big, broad smile. And he said to me, "You are a bad man." I said, "Me?" He said, "Yes, you are a bad man." I said, "Well, why would you say that?" He said, "You give me hell when I was Prime Minister." And then we went on to having a relationship, the one that I cherished, and I respected him far more than I did when he was a boy. But I thought of Basdio Pandey, and I'm sure Basdio Pandey will not describe me in the terms as described by Rudal Munila. But you see, if you spend the amount of money in housing that Dr. Munila spent, and when the election season comes, you have very little to show for it. You have to behave so, and hope that the population don't pay any attention to what went on in their portfolio. And of course, I have the unfortunate circumstance of standing in their way. And if I didn't have this job, I wouldn't be in their way. And they wish that there was nobody in their way to protect you. Let me take you for a few minutes through the housing program in the Ministry of Housing, and you'll understand why Dr. Munila had to resort to what he resorted to last night. I happened to have held one of the portfolios in the Patrick Manning government during the period 2004 to 2007. In fact, I went to the Ministry of Housing in 2003 November, and I held that portfolio until the elections of 2007 November, and the period continued until May 2010. But the documents will show that during the period 2004, when we started a deliberate attempt to invest national resources into increasing the housing stock of the nation, because the demand for housing is so great, regardless of whether you're middle class, low income, or whatever the case might be, there's a serious demand for housing in Trinidad and Tobago. And in 2004, the PM put out a policy which said that the government will take the lead in increasing the housing stock, hoping that the private sector would follow on later on. And for every household that we can house in that program, it's an improvement in the quality of life of a father, a mother, children, because it is your household that you can first observe quality of life that you're going to lead. The housing stock, as you build it, is economic activity. Because when we ran that housing program, it was approximately, over that period of 2004-2009, we spent $5.72 billion between 2004 and 2009. First Minister started out was Danny Montano, but actually started it, and Martin Joseph had a short stint. I had the longest session. By the time I got there, the foundation was laid. And by 2005, I was taking to Parliament the change from NHA to HDC. I was the minister who piloted the HDC legislation. And the explosion in building of houses in this country, record-breaking, I was the minister. So I know a little bit about housing. I know a little bit about housing. And I know a lot about the numbers. I know what you were paying for a unit, what we were spending, and what the program was doing. That expenditure of $5.72 billion was the largest driver in the economy. Because when you build houses, from the quarry operator to the truck driver to the lady who brings the lunch, to the quarry itself, to the hardware store, and then to the owner who gets a house, who paints it, who fixes the path, is economic activity down the line. So the money moves through the system and the economy grows. The housing program brought economic growth. In fact, at the time they were accusing us of fueling inflation because we did have some high levels of inflation. So that 5.72 billion was during a period of relatively elevated inflation because things were happening, money was being spent, and they were accusing Patrick Manning, the Prime Minister, of overheating the economy. Remember that? But we said that if in absorbing that inflation we were housing people, then it was to be good. And they asked us what is our policy. But the policy remains the same. Because I'm being told now that they have 200,000 applicants for HPC houses. When I went into the Ministry of Housing, it was 40,000. And by the time I left, it was 80,000. They are telling us now it's 200,000. So the problem is, in fact, growing. Aspirations of persons. In fact, before the PLM started this program, there was no application for housing. In fact, they had stopped taking applications because they had stopped building houses. It took a policy from 2004 to return to that because that's a PLM policy which we still committed to. So Mr. Rodney Charles, you want to know PLM policy? PLM policy is that there's a serious role for the government in increasing the national housing stock. And we are committed to that. And our track record speaks for itself. Because that $5.72 billion gave the people of Trinidad and Tobago who own that money 26,000 housing units at various stages of completion. When the PLM left office in 2010, from persons who entered into houses built in the program, to houses completed and not distributed, to have completed houses, to houses at foundation stage, to approvals for Fairfield and Princess Town when no construction had been started, but which all the approvals were in place on that estate. You were talking about a commitment to 26,000 houses. They came into office, and Dr. Munilal was housing minister. During the period that they've been in office, they have spent $7 billion in that housing program. $7 billion in their period. And you know how many housing units? If you say that the average cost of one of those houses that they're building is $500,000, then they should be telling you about 14,000 units. You know how many they can tell you about? They can tell you about 3,000. 3,000. But they will kill you with advertisements and old talk and brainwashing as to what a wonderful thing they're doing. Because you know what? The average cost for construction, when we were hiring contractors in the period 2004 to 2009, the contractors who were building those HTC houses, and there were different standards, there were varying standards. We had from the Fidelis Heights, which was at the higher end, to the in Central London. There were the range of houses. But the contractors who got contracts under us, the PLM, the prices per unit to construct range from 165,000 to 342,000. That is what we were paying a contractor. The low-end houses, 165,000. The high-end houses, 342 and ranges in between. When you bid on that price, and remember, inflation was a little elevated. When you bid on that price, we at the PLM also had a program of a 2% mortgage with nothing done. As you enter the house once you allocated it, 2% mortgage, and then you pay and listen to what you're going to be paying. The 2% mortgage on a unit between 165 and 330, a 3-bedroom unit in Carlsonville, you get for $165,000, a 2% mortgage, then you're paying $700 a month. Very affordable. A 3-bedroom townhouse in Cleaver Heights, $291,000, a 2% mortgage, you're paying $1,200 a month. Some of you are paying 3 times that in rent. Yes. But if you were fortunate to have allocated a Cleaver Heights unit, you then could pay $1,200. So immediately, you got relief by living for less for accommodation, and you were in line with owning a unit, so you had an asset. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit in Hoover, $330,000, a 2% mortgage with no down payment, and you were paying $1,400 a month. On top of that, we had a provision where, depending on the nature of the unit, if sale could not be the option, or if you, the beneficiary, didn't want to buy, we had the rent-to-own program, where you could choose to pay these same kinds of affordable rents. And then, if later on you decide you want to buy it, a portion of your rent will go towards the cost of the unit. That is what the PNM government has done and will continue to do. So as to increase the housing stock, make the units available and make them available and affordable to those who need them most. That is our housing policy which we remain committed to. But what has been the housing policy of the recent times? Let me tell you what the policy is. After 5 years, I had to listen a couple of weeks ago to the said Dr. Munilal telling people that from here on into election, they'll be distributing 100 houses per week. And that sounds great, eh? But if you spend my $7 billion and you only come and tell me at the end of your 5-year term you're distributing 100 houses per week and I don't call the police for you, that's something wrong with me. But as he says he was going to do that, the press, the ever-vigilant press in Trinidad and Tobago asked him, where are these houses now and where are they to be had? Where are the locations? And I have the locations here for you. Remember I told you I had something to do with housing? Yeah. Okay. Here what Dr. Munilal tells the press and told you the people. The government is looking for you. Have 100 houses a week for you. And they are in these locations. Bonia North Aruka. That is a housing project that I had something to do with. Whether they're finishing it, they didn't start it, and they let it go. Race course, I'm sorry, that's a race. Carlsonville, PNM program, 701 units, PNM. Chaconia Crescent 4 roads, 96 units. When they won the election, they left them there. They were supposed to be finishing them. They're still finishing them. Greenvale Park, south of La Hoqueta, PNM. La Fortune, Point Fortin, 42 units, PNM. Greenvale Park was 346 units, that was that project. Beacon Lot A and Lot B, 12 units, PNM. Victoria Keys, Devo Martin, like the building the Tower of Babel, they can't finish that. PNM. Fairfield Estate, Princess Town. We got all the approvals for that project in the face of objection from the UNC. They said Dr. Munilal and the UNC MPs waging war against us, obstructing that project, accusing us of wanting to bring our people according to who they are, to bring all the people into Fairfield, to dilute their votes, and they call it social engineering and they opposed it. From the day they became government, they fell in love with it because it involves culture. And that is now on the list of houses to be given out. So I gave them that. Cubaton Guapo, PNM. Bonet North, PNM. Wellington to Princeton, 116 units PNM. 6th Avenue, Malik, 34 units PNM. Viewfort, St. James. Anybody here from Palestine? The abandoned Viewfort complex. That is 132 units sitting there watching it for 5 years. PNM. Exchange, Cuba. Pier Road, Library. All of these projects were part of the PNM 26,000 that I spoke about earlier on. I told you, some of them were finished, some were halfway, some were quarter way, and like Fairfield in Princeton, they were just at the approval stage, just completely time to go on a water contract. After 4.5 years, or I say 5 years because next month is 5 years. Next month is 5 years. After 5 years, they're now telling you that they have remobilized these sites. What does that mean? It means that they spent 5 years not finishing projects that they met. And if you don't believe that they could do that, go down to Carnage and look at the Carnage fishing complex and you'll see they're the same way they met it. Well, this is the housing equivalent. Pass outside Petrotrin and you will see the skeleton of the new Petrotrin headquarters. The moss garment the same way they met it. And they think that's an embarrassment to the PNM because the PNM was going to build a new head office for Petrotrin. And they left the skeleton there to embarrass us to think. The same way they left the Lara Stadium a cricket ground. This government could not finish a cricket ground in Trinidad and Tobago. And the same neglect and left there for political reasons the Lara cricket ground and the Petrotrin complex and the Carnage fishing complex. They left all these housing projects unfinished. And after 5 years, your government is working for you. And now they're meeting a room and telling you about lottery. And I saw a minister of government, one called Jaimo Gracio, saying what? And you know, if they get constipated and they get, you know, they tell you, I'm not going there. Everything they have to do, they must praise the Prime Minister first. So they are now telling us that the Prime Minister, in her magnificence, starts a lottery program in HDC, so you're not going to get your housing by lottery. People of Trinidad and Tobago, before Mr. Persad-Bissessar became Prime Minister, how many Saturday evenings did you see a lottery draw in this country? We have in this room this evening a former acting chairman of the HDC. The lottery draw was brought in by the PNM because we had a policy of distribution and 60% was lottery and the other 40% of other considerations. These people are taking your money, paying ads to tell you that the Prime Minister bringing a lottery system to distribute houses. Lies. But I told you a while ago that the average price before they came in was 165,242. Let me give you an idea of two of their projects, their pet projects. In the list of housing, in the list of locations from which the 100 housing a week was supposed to come, they named two projects. One in Eden Gardens and one in Cypress Gardens. Eden Gardens is in Freeport and Cypress Gardens in Unanoa. And they also boast that they have kept inflation low. Remember that? Yep. At bay. So there's no real inflationary pressure to push prices away from where they were when they came in, according to them. The average cost of one of the units to construct in Union Hall is $770,000. And the average cost in Freeport, in Eden Gardens, is $870,000. And take a deep breath. Those are the cheap ones. Those are the cheap ones. Do you all understand English? Because on the list of the houses, 100 per week, they named Terrestrial Farms. And let me tell you about Terrestrial Farms. I was Minister of Housing when two parcels of land were offered to us from the private sector. One was in Mt.D'or near Cameron Road, and the other was Terrestrial Farms. And while we were looking for land to build in the East-West Corridor, because the pressure is greatest in the East-West Corridor and land is scarce, when those owners came to us and offered us those lands, and the HDC came to me, I said, no, the lands are too expensive for subsidized government construction. Let the private sector go and do that. If you go to Mt.D'or now, at Cameron, you will see a major private sector housing there called West Hills. The private sector moved in, and the private sector has built a number of housing blocks down there. Because all we want is for the national housing stock to increase. That's what. So the government does some, and the private sector does some, and the market will take care of it. West Hills is not low-cost housing, but there's a market for it, and the private sector did that. Terrestrial Farms, they bought it. In 2006, I think it was, I instructed the HTC, don't buy it, the price is too high. Because by the time you pay that kind of money, and you pay for the construction, the cost per unit will be much too high. We already have a problem. And the whole discussion about how much the government should spend in the housing program, how much subsidy, why subsidy, who should get the subsidy, these are all elements of the policy. But if you are aware of the policy, and you see land being expensive coming from the private sector, you know that will turn the equation too far away from the government's policy. This government bought the land, and they got the bill. Cost of construction, two contractors, 720 units. And I'm not tonight going to go into the issue as to whether they have approvals or not. Because one of the reasons why we also didn't buy it there is because the Ministry of Works was opposed to any large-scale development there. Because the infrastructure was not there to support a large-scale development to justify the price of that land. Wassa had a problem with it too. And if you don't believe me, when we built Leader Heights close by, Wassa forced the HDC to pay for the sewer line from Leader Heights down to the Eastern Main Road as a condition for the approval. So since then, Wassa had issues, and with the water supply to Leader Heights, there was also an issue. Okay. So now, ask them tomorrow morning when you see them, if they have approvals for the 720 units that they've awarded the contract for already. And here the pricing. Infrastructure, $211 million. The actual housing construction, $704 million. For a total of $960 million for 720 units. That means the average price they put out to construct, I'm not talking about the price of the land that already gone, that is sunk, $1.273 million per unit. And the other contractor, who is doing 484 units, infrastructure, $138 million, housing, 420, the construction of the actual housing units, $425 million, for a total of $564 million. And if you divide that by 484, you get $1.166 million. That is the policy. Those are the numbers. That is the taxpayer housing construction under Dr. Rudal Munilal. That is the kind of construction that will go forward if you allow them to continue in the government after they call the election. And these monies I'm talking about, they're telling you they're doing this as though they're doing you a favor. This handing out of 100 units, handed to you as if they're doing you a favor. On the back of ads that say your government is working for you. Now, who did they expect to work for when they got the job in 2010? They were working for themselves. So tonight, I want to ask Dr. Munilal one question. And it has nothing to do with my mouth and in soup. I want to ask him if he knows anything about a mall in Holland. I want to ask him to tell this country all that he knows truthfully about a mall in Holland. Today they're spending money left, right and center, giving Range Rovers to friends as gifts. This is the foundation of that. And you, the people, these are people you hired to work for you. Working for themselves. Working for themselves. And then they have the millions asking me to tell you about P&M policy. I don't have to invent any P&M policy in housing. There is a P&M policy in housing. I represent the P&M, and the P&M in office will continue a program of sense and accountability. I want to say to Dr. Munilal tonight, I was a Minister of Housing. I have maintained the same lifestyle I had when I went into housing as when I came out, and I have the same friends and the same social circles, and I have no more. I defy anybody in this country, contractor or otherwise, to truthfully come forward and say, when I was the Minister of Housing under the P&M, that you have to give me a dynamite to get a contract in the HDC. Come forward and identify yourself. My name is Keith Rowley of the P&M. Come forward and say, you know, in the morning, for rum. Rum came before or after. But I heard Dr. Munilal say something last night that had me stunned. In the worshipping of the Prime Minister, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, Dr. Munilal said the following words. In her term as Prime Minister, not a finger can be pointed at her. But you see, he thinks he's a clown, you know. Dr. Munilal thinks he's a clown. Not a finger could be pointed at her, and he pointing 5 fingers at her. With respect to corruption. So he is now pretending he doesn't know what corruption is. So since he doesn't know what corruption is, he is telling us that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who is sitting in the saddle of the most corrupt horse in any political vineyard, that a finger has been pointed at her by him, because he is all part of the empire. The amount of people in this government who in the police interest and the police gaze, it's a criminal empire. And if the Prime Minister is leading a criminal empire, not only the finger, but an arrow is pointing at her. So, what does Dr. Munilal think Section 34 is? If not corruption? If Section 34 is not corruption, then you tell me what is. You conspire. You think you are. But what happened in Section 34? Section 34 is, let me remind you, financiers of the UNC had questions to answer in American courts. Their associates answered their question and made the jail and go home after. They turned state witness in America, and the Americans tried to get our people here, who were the other part of the equation, to come to their courts, have their day in court, and either be found guilty or be found innocent. These two financiers fighting tooth and nail, not to be extradited. And under this government, they evaded the extradition by virtue of Mrs. Persad-Bissessar heading a cabinet. And from that cabinet came a conversation with the parliament that says, we are going to pass an administration of justice bill, the purpose of which is to reduce the backlog in the court, and all of us want the backlog reduced. So they fed us that line. And when we saw the potential threat with respect to persons escaping the court, we said, what we want your commitment. They answered under Mrs. Persad-Bissessar saying, nothing will be done, and specifically the law will not be proclaimed for at least 3 years. During that time, they will build courts, they will appoint more masters to the courts and lay all the foundation, and in 36 months they'll be ready to operationalize that administration of justice bill. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar gave us those assurances. And then come Independence Night, in the dead of night, unbeknownst to us, parliamentarians found out from the media that Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, heading the cabinet, had gone to the president like Nicodemus in the dead of night and got the president to pull out the useful section, section 34, pass it into law, and by Monday morning, their friends had known that that had been done, and they were before the court asking for their relief. And then they changed the lawyers who had successfully fought every challenge from those people. And the minute they changed them, we lost the case. And then the Attorney General, who was in charge of that as his responsibility under the guidance of Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, he sued me because I said he mishandled the case. Sued me on that matter. And then, when he thought a victory had been constructed in the courthouse, he came in the cabinet press conference to announce his judgment. And there was one friend of mine in the media who made a note in the newsroom that in March, when they go for the assessment, that is the day when Rowley will become bankrupt. Because he was there telling the media and the world he expects substantial damages and he wants an apology. No, 2 apologies. He wants one for himself and one for the Prime Minister. They are a tag team. They are a tag team. So even when they get one apology, they want one for the Prime Minister too. And when I went to the Parliament and I asked our Prime Minister, are you aware or did you authorize the Attorney General to come in the government post-cabinet press conference and speak about his private lawsuit he says against Keith Rowley? She said yes. I said, were you aware of what he was going to say? She said yes. They are tag team, eternal twins, Persad-Bissessar and Ananamnogan. And when Ananamnogan became too heavy even for her to carry, our Prime Minister has gone berserk. She's gone berserk. So last night, lonely as she is, she became a company. This is a lady who oversaw the expenditure and approved the expenditure of about $400 billion in this country. She is now up for review by you, the people. She gets a microphone and a platform. She gets an audience. And all she could come to the audience with is a red envelope, a red folder, and promising Mali date. And of course, holding me accountable for Mali date. Because you see, she wants credit for having to have got rid of the people that she chose and put in office very carefully. So as fast as they crash and burn, she wants credit for supplying the matches. Not that you should be holding her for playing the matches in the first place. Because many of them should never have been in a cabinet because they were known quantities. But she chose them the same way she chose Devan Maraj. A man who said that all Muslims should be killed and put in the desert of Saudi Arabia. She reached over and picked him up and put him in the cabinet. He is now saying that what I should apologize for. Understand? And he is passing on that banner in Dede or Puch in Trinidad and Tobago in 2015 that you should hide your children from Keith Rowley. Persad-Bissessar, Anand Ramuka, Rudal Mudila, David Maraj, we understand very clearly your racist undertones subliminal. And it's a pity that you have to resort to that rather than report on a successful tenure as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I give you the assurance that if the PLM had half of what they had to spend on the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we would have been proud to report on our stewardship. As we did in 2007. And in 2010 they said Manu was building too much. At least he was building. And he goes to the mall once in a while. But you see, there are those, I smile every so often when I see the talking heads, some of them highly paid and voucher, talking about Mrs. Persad-Bissessar is a unifying force in Trinidad and Tobago. Unifying what? Unifying our political base. But her political base is not Trinidad and Tobago. Let me explain to you how she unifies. Last night at the forum, she was there fulminating and telling our citizens in South Trinidad that every Friday, I'm quoting here, every Friday the opposition is in Parliament opposing them and stopping them and saying that the government shouldn't develop South Trinidad. Now, if you don't contact to visit, you tell me what is. She is in a battle every Friday. The lady does not even come to the Parliament. She spends 3.5 hours making up a face upstairs and comes downstairs to make a speech when she has a speech to make. And as soon as she finishes making the speech, out she goes. She was the least participating Prime Minister of all our Prime Ministers. Go and look at the record. Patrick Manning, Bas-Dio Pandy, A.N.R. Robinson, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar is the one that performed the least in the Parliament in terms of taking part in parliamentary business. She's more concerned about how she looks and how she sounds. But then she goes and tells our brothers and sisters in South Trinidad that we, every Friday, she has to fight battles against us. You see live television on the Parliament channel. Do you see that? No. I want to say to the people of Dede and Orapuch tonight, those of you who watch the Parliament channel, tell me one instance where the PLM stayed in Parliament and fought Mrs. Persad-Bissessar in a battle to prevent something from happening in South. Maybe if we had done that, this little island, facing a very, very serious economic future, where oil price is hovering at $40 a barrel, and public servants just got an extra $2 billion in recurrent expenditure, and the NGC is being raided by this government. We are now on the verge of having 2 law schools within 20 miles of each other. And you have to ask yourself, if you had that money, was that the best way to spend it? The government of Trinidad and Tobago, for the benefit of the region, because it's a UWI setup, not like UTT, which is for Trinidad and Tobago, UWI. So we have to fund it for who will come there from abroad. As the crow flies, we have 2 government-owned and run law schools in this country. And that's at the same time, the private sector has been doing a wonderful job supporting UWI in adding more lawyers to the national numbers. And of course, they will tell you what wonderful thing they have done by building another children's hospital within 7 miles or 10 miles of the other one. In a time when we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough nurses, you know what they say? When we build it, it's going to be state of the art. You push the button here and the child gets fixed. Cutting edge technology. And we will import 2,500 Filipino, Indian and Cuban nurses. I want to repeat that. They will import thousands of Filipino, Indian and Cuban nurses. This is 2015. Let me remind you what they did in 2010 when they came into office. When they came into office in 2010, they met a program of recruitment of Cuban nurses and doctors to fill the vacancies we had here so that we can get adequate health care. They came in May 24th, and by August, they had issued instructions to cancel the contracts for the Cuban nurses and doctors because they were opposed to the importation of Cuban healthcare givers. They actually canceled the contracts. Persons might have died in our hospitals for a lack of health care because they did not allow the contract to supply the nurses that were going to come at the moment of the election. And after 4 years, you have to hear now that the big thing, the next big thing since sliced bread is a wave of nurses from Cuba and from India and from Nigeria and from wherever else. Understand? And then, you know, she says, the PNM has not developed the South. And the PNM has something against the South. I know she's a lawyer. But I also think that she might have done geography. Where is Point Lisas? In the north. Where is Atlantic LNG? Where is the Southern Academy for the Performing Arts? Where are all the road infrastructure that they use today, even though it needs to be expanded? You tell me one place in the south where a child who wants to go to high school doesn't have a place? As a matter of fact, there are excess school places in the south in high schools and in primary schools. Where was she when the PNM came into office? And the only road to south was a thread that led from Current all the way through the cane fields down Claxton Bay, through Pointe-a-Pitre into San Fernando. And it took you sometimes 2.5 or 3 hours. And if a truck break down Pointe-a-Pitre Hill, it could take you 5 hours. Where was she when the PNM built the highway all the way to San Fernando and to Golconda? But she stands up in front of our citizens and say, the PNM has some spite against the south. And she goes down. And she is not a deliverer. And I want to ask Mr. Persad-Bissessar tonight, is it because you had to do all these things in South? And it had to be at the expense of you not finishing the Carnage Fishing Centre? Is it because you didn't have enough resources? Is it because the $400 million that SIS got in extra at the BTAM in that scam, that some of it couldn't have been spent to finish the Carnage Fishing Centre? Why is it that today the Development Sporting Complex is only now being restarted after being abandoned as a construction project for 4 years? Is it because we didn't have the resources and all the resources were required in your constituency? No, I say it was possible to do development in Dede, in Pinal, in Scarborough and Carnage. The choice to do it otherwise was a choice that was made deliberately by Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, who engaged in a practice of unannounced affirmative action. Misguided as it is, and last night in the election campaign, standing before locals in her bailiwick in that area, telling them that the PNM against them and the PNM didn't develop them. And then I have to hear from my talking heads that she's a unifying force in Trinidad and Tobago. The same way Munna doesn't understand the meaning of corruption. Somebody doesn't understand what unifying means. my constituents are hurt in Carnage. Because at least after you spend $5 billion in a development program, you could have spent a few dollars allowing them to have the completed fishing complex. You understand? When I said that we will build 300 houses on the eastern side in a valley of Guav Road in Chagalatis, approved by Common Country, they organized themselves and came down there and encouraged Carnage people to oppose me. And I told Carnage people, if you oppose me now, you will be right here when those lands are being given away to other people and you will get one square foot. Today, they are building Guav Road, rebuilding it for $44 million. $44 million, rebuilding it, creating more road front to give away more Carnage, more Shagamas land. And of course, the single large beachfront in Carnage has been now disposed of by way of lease contract on the way out of office. And the convention center, we've been told, has been given away because it will cost $200 million to repair. And since this poor government can't do the maintenance for $200 million, the contractor who got it will do it. Who is the biggest pocket in Trinidad today? Forget the historical perspective of Shagarabas Convention Center. Forget it being a historical site, a heritage site. If it requires $200 million in, God knows what, who is in a better position to do it? The government or a contractor who has a contract? And of course, when that didn't sell, they tell you it was termite ridden. Under this government, termites learn to eat concrete. And she holds up. She's looking for company, as I told you. So she holds up a red folder saying it's Marlene Gate. The height of irresponsibility on the part of the Prime Minister. Let me go on record here now. Let me go on record for those who don't know me yet. For those who will never know me. Because I don't know how many times I have to say. I'm a man of service to this country. This country has been very good to me and my family. I've learned the best of standards in this modern today. I was baptized in a Methodist church. I was raised by Seventh-day Adventist and Anglican. And I married a Catholic and produced 2 Catholic children. And in my working life, I had the responsibility to manage Hindus and Muslims in large numbers. So I have a record. And I defy anybody in this country to come forward, identify yourself, and truthfully say that Keith Rowley has ever treated you unfairly in the workplace, in the church, in the school. Come forward. Identify yourself. And by the same token, I have held public office in this country. And when it was time to call a spade and stand up for the people of Trinidad to be, I did it at the cost of my office. So you don't have to recreate me from any bucket of mud. I exist. Therefore I am. And it's for you, the people, to determine whether I suddenly, all of a sudden, become this big black angry man who threatens my existence. And they somehow feel that that holds some terror for me. I have been so comfortable in my skin for all these 65 years that I'll tell you one thing. If this country needs a champion to defend your interests against the like of Persad-Bissessar and the UNC, I am that man. I place my trust in my understanding, that there are far more decent, right-thinking people in this country than Mrs. Persad-Bissessar. So sometime towards the end of last year, a story came out in the newspapers that Marlene McDonald had questions to answer about some thing that happened under her as minister under some foundation called Calabar. If you're in public life and issues are raised about your conduct, you have to answer. And Marlene McDonald is no different. Questions were raised about me. I had to answer. I had to appear before 2 commissions of inquiry. In fact, on one of them I had to pay a lawyer to force them to get me in front of the commission of inquiry. On the second occasion, I called for the inquiry. And I said if the inquiry shows that I was wrong in my assessment, I will resign the seat of Diego Martin West and I will walk away from public life. I will be off inquiry. So Mrs. Persad-Bissessar and your handlers, I am known to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I have a record. So when the issue was raised about Marlene McDonald spoke publicly and she produced a document which said, yes, these allegations were made. Yes, they were there. The Integrity Commission, I was called in, I was examined, and this is a document which the Integrity Commission submitted to me. At the end of it, it says they have examined the allegations and they have found that she was not in breach of the Integrity in Public Life Act. Now that might not please those who made the allegations. I don't know what Ms. McDonald told the Integrity Commission, but I'll tell you one thing. I subscribe to the rule of law and fairness. The authority under the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago with all kinds of powers and duties to examine the conduct of public officers like ministers is the Integrity Commission. And if those allegations were made, regardless of how they feel about it, if the Integrity Commission examined it and said that they found no basis to go further in the matter, I take that as sufficient closure to have done nothing but respect. But of course there are people who won't take that position. Listen tomorrow and you'll hear another about land date. Allegations are made against me. Like I'm saying. I had to go before a commission of inquiry. Costing taxpayers millions of dollars. At the end of the day, I had no question to answer. But they wouldn't accept the outcome. So they went and they slandered me. First was the Integrity Commission. The first grievous slander was the Integrity Commission. Sending slander, uncontested and unbeknownst to me, to the Integrity, to the DDP. And the said Persad-Bissessar had an inside track in that. Because she was at the Christmas party at the UNC, telling the media that I will be arrested shortly on 17 charges. And I wouldn't tell you who drafted the second 17 charges. In a matter where I was never even spoken to, never given the opportunity to defend myself. But when I went to court, and the court ordered the Integrity Commission to go and conduct the investigation, it took a year to do it. At the end of the year, they issued me the document in the same way, saying that they have no reason to suspect that I have done anything wrong. They wouldn't accept that, you know. So in the integrity matter, I got $1.1 million in damages and legal fees. They still wouldn't accept it, you know. Another one slandered me. Up to the courthouse we go. I got $475,000. It was supposed to be me and Ibi the last who was doing this thing. He sued Iowa George Station. He got, I think it's $507,000. He sued Congress Singh, the man who made the allegation. He got $500,000. Listen tomorrow, where they're looking for distractions from the stewardship, and they hear all about land deed. But before tomorrow, let me put them on notice. I challenge any one of you to say everything outside the parliament that you will say in the parliament tomorrow. Anything that you want to say in the parliament tomorrow is all right by me. I'm putting the population on notice. I'm inviting them to say any or all of it outside the parliament. Okay? And those are my terms. Those are my terms. And it's for you, the people of Trinidad today, to understand how you're being played for fools. That land-gate inquiry would have cost you about $15 million. By the time all the various agencies pay their lawyers, and they pay me, and they pay this, and they pay that, you, the taxpayer, who never seen $5 million, you would have paid that. And the lawyers are whistling to the back. You understand? So she holds up this red Marlin Gate thing. And at the time when it came out, I said, based on the fact that the Integrity Commission has adjudicated upon allegations made of it, no, I have no basis to take any action against Ms. McDonald. But if, in the future, there are new issues, new allegations, which can be substantiated and warrant my attention, well then, I most certainly will pay attention. I lead from in front of these matters. So, last night in holding up our red envelope and spraying in the left, right and center, she spoke about hiring of people and of people being hired who live abroad. I heard it. So, this morning, I communicated with the Office of Parliament because I took from those innuendos that she might have been or was pointing to the conduct of the office of Ms. McDonald. Because all of us parliamentarians, we get, I think it's $45,000 or $40,000 to pay staff for the parliament office. And what staff is parliament staff. But the money comes to our bank account, and you're required to choose the workers, and they are paid from that bank account, and you determine how much you pay them. I have it, she has it, we all have it. So I asked the Parliament, is there any issue with respect to Ms. McDonald's conduct of her office and the management of that money? Is there any audit which has found anything wrong as reported to the clerk of the House? Because the auditing of those matters is under the Parliament, and Parliament has the auditors. All we do is use the staff, and Parliament comes in frequently to audit what's going on in the office. I asked the clerk, do you have any information about any irregularity in Mr. McDonald's office about today? Or was there any before today about her handling in the office? I received a reply this evening from the Parliament which tells me they are unaware of anything untoward in Mr. McDonald's office, and they have no audit information indicating at this time that anything is wrong. Yet the Prime Minister wants me to do something about Marlene. I ask you, fellow citizens, on what basis? On what basis? Because she says so? As I said then last year when it came up with the other matter and the Integrity Commission's document was used, I'm saying again, I hold no brief for any person for their responsibility under me. But my responsibility is to ensure that we all measure up to the highest standard. And I'm saying again, if sometime in the future the circumstances change and warrant attention, I most certainly will take the attention, will give the attention that's required. What more can I say? But what I'm not going to do is to take action based on a UNC Prime Minister waving a red flag and talking about not tonight, later. Plagiarizing Japona. Because you may recall, it was a UNC Attorney General, Anand Ramogan, who in an election campaign similarly went on a political platform with a DPPO police report on Mt.D'or. And here was the country's Attorney General quite improperly, but informing us that Mt.D'or was involved in something illegal with respect to the obtaining and purchasing of a Range Rover from England. Mt.D'or was an officer of the court. She's a lawyer. Turns out that the Attorney General was wrong, he was malicious, and he was just plain wicked. But who am I to raise that? I stood up then and objected to that behavior when no one else on their side would. But guess what? Mt.D'or is today, you will see him. So you see me? I didn't hide from nobody else like that. All I will say, anytime evidence is produced to support serious allegations of misconduct, any person over whom I have control will have to account for their stewardship. I can give no better comment and no more comment than people should have. I think it's wrong. I think it's very wrong for the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago to go on a platform and waving a file of innuendos, to tarnish people by innuendo. If the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago has in that file evidence of wrongdoing on the part of Mr. McDonald or any other officer, the proper and decent thing to do is to pass it to the competent authorities so they can take action. Whether it's the police or the Integrity Commission. If you have that evidence, you pass it there and then you would have done your duty. But no, you come on a political platform. The nice lady that you are, same person they're telling us is a nice lady, and trying to damage people by any way. Prime Minister, if you have evidence of wrongdoing on the part of anybody in the parliament, you're a senior counsel, self-inflicted albeit, you know what to do. You know what to do. But I'll tell you one thing, people, here in Mt.D'or tonight and Trinidad and Tobago. However, these little fires burn out, the raging flame of the accountability that is required by Persad-Bissessar will not be burned out until we advise the people of Trinidad and Tobago that they will this. They're trying hard to create diversions of all kinds and distractions of all kinds, and to feed. You know the other day, I heard one of the commentators said that the election should be fought on who have more corn, feed more fowl. And I felt so let down. Who have more corn is expected to feed more fowl. Are those the standards of the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Especially if the corn is obtained by stealing from the national granary. But I tell you tonight, the PLM is not in the battle for who have more corn to feed more fowl, because they had plenty more corn than the PLM in Tobago. They catch a chicken. Because you know, the high-stepping, long-legged lady will tell you, if she's in the mood, that money can't buy me love. And money might help you around campaign, but money doesn't vote. You, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you vote. You vote. And you know. And one thing, every time you see the money, ask yourself, how did this so suddenly rich? You know, they must be paying the Prime Minister with elastic, because I never seen money stretch so. And they don't want to account for that too. They want you to believe that you get a box drain, you get at this or you get at that. That is not the way you measure a government. You measure a government on whether they have done what you hired them to do and not done what they were not supposed to do. So we can say to this government, you have left undone the things that you ought to have done, and you didn't do the things that you ought to have done. So, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is that Trinidad and Tobago is being dismantled. Being dismantled. And the last office that they're trying to dismantle is the office of the opposition. As the last one. And they will not do it while I hold that post. And they didn't do it while I held that post. And I will only hold that post until no later than September of 2015. Because there can be no better poll than a general election. In 2010, there was a poll, and the PNM lost it. Because you people came out to vote in that poll, and you chose them. There's a poll on the way. I expect you, Mt.D'or, Mount Hope, Mount Lambert, Aranguez, to come out and take part in that poll. And when you come out, it is for you to determine, not Persad-Bissessar. It is for you to determine if you have confidence in the opposition leader to run Trinidad and Tobago in the face of this. So tonight, I want to give you the assurance that this election campaign will be about the issues. The same way I told you tonight, the issues in the housing program. We'll talk about the other issues. I can talk tonight a bit more about how yesterday the country was shut down. You wake up yesterday morning, and from Shagarama to Sani Grandi, from Charlottesville to Crown Point, and every artery in this country was clogged. And we've been told by rogue police officers. And guess what? Just like everything else, the Prime Minister didn't know. And the National Security Minister didn't know. And the Commissioner of Police didn't know. Have you all understood what happened here yesterday? The entire country came to a halt. Children couldn't go to school. Teachers couldn't go to school. Pilots couldn't get to the airport. The planes couldn't leave. Patients couldn't get to the hospital. Doctors couldn't get to the hospital. The country ground to a halt like it never did before. I tell you what. They turn on the phone. As long as the battery is in the phone, they can turn it on and listen to your conversation. And none of them know that police information. Nobody in authority in this country knew that junior police officers, Division 2 police officers, was going to shut down the country. You think this could have happened in a serious country and the Minister of National Security was not fired? If that happened in a city or a town in America, we may have gone. You think that could have happened in New York and Mayor Bloomberg or whoever it is was still there? Especially after you have something called the National Operations Center. I went to Lara last carnival, whole night in the Fed, helicopter on the head making noise, shining light on the Fed. But you have to ask yourself, if they didn't know about this nationwide calamity, what else don't they know? What else don't they know? Well, whatever little confidence we had in them, hoping for the best against hope, it's all gone. Because, what's next? What's next? So, they started out. And let me remind Mr. Moody where this came from, in case you don't forget. Because I'm paid to remind you. They came into office, and they met which they objected to before, something called, the name is listening now, a cabinet subcommittee, which oversaw the negotiations, the public sector negotiating committee, PSNC. Because the unions were part of the arrangement, they gave a commitment to dismantle that. This was simply a mechanism whereby ministers of government, a small group of them, will oversee this whole question of the negotiations in the public sector. Because the public sector has the same paymaster. It's not like Lever Brothers, Whitco, Carrot that have different paymasters. The public sector, wherever you work in the public sector, is the same paymaster, taxpayers. So the cabinet oversaw it to maintain some level of balance and equity in there. But of course, we can understand the unions. They don't really too like that because it kind of prevents them from having the kind of leverage they would like to have. No problem with that. I can't argue with the unions over that. But if I'm in cabinet, I know the value of it. They came into office and they gave a commitment and they followed through on it and they dismantled that. And they level a free fall in the public sector. And the Prime Minister took over public sector negotiations. And if you don't believe me, I'm not making this up. Go and look at the Hansard, go and look at the papers. We told you so. Because when police negotiations were on the way for better conditions, the Prime Minister intervened, undermined the negotiations, and gave policemen a $1,000 a month increase. We told policemen that is good for now, but it's no good for the future. When you get old and you want your pension, that is not pensionable. They paid it and been paying it. That was the Prime Minister's edict. It was the Prime Minister herself who decreed a 5% increase and no more. Watson Duke accepted and went on vacation. When the OWTU stood up and said, we're not taking that, and forced the issue, it went from 5% to 9%. And then public servant got the makeup and Watson Duke lived happily ever after. That was done under the guidance and control of Mrs. Persad-Bissessar. Then come the next term for negotiations. They're negotiating, but there's no equivalent to, no control of the system, and they go and they grant public servants 14%. I want to ask the government tonight, what is the figure you expect to settle at after you grant public servants 14%? And if you grant the police 14% or 13% or whatever because they shut down the country, what are you going to pay the firemen? What are you going to pay the prisoners? And when you shut down the country and you grant them what you have to grant them, the chat is now not. Is now out. Because the logical conclusion to this is that if the prison officers don't get what they want of equivalence, they don't come to work. But you don't have to go far to see that. They now know what to do, and the next thing you will hear, somebody lost a key. Remember a fellow walked out of Piaco police, and you know the reason? They had a lock that wasn't working from the outside. The key had to be in there for the lock to work. And the prisoner put his hand outside the bar and turned the lock and walked out from Piaco police station. We have not seen other instances. So I'm not making this up. And then if you don't give the firemen an equivalent, and they park all the fire trucks, or worse, if they start a fire. And then of course, if you don't give the doctors and nurses and they stay home, God forbid, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, Mr. Aaron McLeod and the UNC has put this country on a skidding slope and God alone knows where we're going to end up. Last night, the dumbfounded Minister of National Security, who initially said it was a normal police operation. Tonight he said, if I find out it was not, and it was a negotiation, heads will roll or foot will roll or something like that. If only to take responsibility for this calamity, he should have been fired. But he's still in line to be the shortest serving Minister of National Security. He's still in line for that. He's in line for that. And then, you know how many millions of dollars were lost yesterday? You know how many millions of man-hours were lost yesterday? You know how much gas was burnt in cars in those traffic jams yesterday? Subsidized gasoline? And of course, you know now how now to negotiate with the Persad-Bissessar government. What a tragedy. What a tragedy. And they came in promising to do better. They have Errol McCloud in the cabinet, so Labour is now sailing smooth, something lollipop. What a catastrophe. You look at the days ahead. Look at the days ahead and see what the outcome of yesterday is going to be. I'm putting you on notice that they lost control of the situation and it cannot be easily rolled back. Cannot be. But they don't care. They don't care. They have enough money in India. They have enough money in China. They have enough money in Panama. They have enough malls in Holland. And all of us who have to stay there will pay the price for that. That's why I'm saying tonight, instead of going to Parliament tomorrow to talk foolishness, call the election now. Call the election now. You want to put me on trial? The best place to put me on trial is in front of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Come with it in front of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Come with it. You're afraid to come with it because in the PNM, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. Mando, I want to thank you for a wonderful welcome. I want to thank you for the support for Charles Dancing. And all over Trinidad and Tobago, say, great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And we shall be.
Ladies and gentlemen, I told you he takes his oath of office seriously. Show your love for the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, your political leader. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close, let me invite quickly to the lectern to move an expression of thanks the chairman of the St. Joseph constituency, Mr. Raphael John. Welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All protocol observed. Good night, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure in proposing the vote of thanks for what has been a successful event. First and foremost, I'd like to express a deep sense of gratitude to our guest of honor, our political leader and next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Your presence here today has added fuel to our efforts. Sir, we sincerely thank you. I'd like to also thank our Member of Parliament, Honorable Terence Singh, for being the driving force behind the organization of this important event. And I wish to thank you for your commitment to us here in St. Joseph. To Ms. Anne-Marie Matamoro, the hard-working chairman of the Women's League, and the team for their dedication and exemplary work ethic. Thank you. To Mr. Dion Augustine and the field operations team who worked extremely hard. We congratulate you for a job well done. To my wonderful PNM family, We thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to support the St. Joseph constituency. Some of you have traveled from very far on short notice. So let me reassure you from the positive feedback that we are receiving, I can say that on election night, this seat will be counted in favor of the PNL. Finally, I want to place on record my heartfelt thanks to the residents of Mt.D'or who have attended this meeting and provided their overwhelming support. Your interest and enthusiasm is indeed a good sign and will keep us motivated. Thank you all, and the Almighty Allah bless and cover you as you make journey to your homes. And before you go, I would like to invite to the stage Ms. Miranda Joseph. Ms. Miranda Joseph, to take us home in a song.